Do you ever feel a profound, almost sacred ache in your soul as you witness the world moving at a pace that feels utterly alien to your own? Do you scroll through the highlight reels of others' lives, the engagements, the promotions, the new home sand, feel a quiet sting? A whisper that you've somehow fallen out of sync with the rhythm of life itself? You are not alone in this feeling. This experience is not a sign of failure. It is a sacred signal, a deep and resonant call from your higher self. It is an awakening. If this message finds you now, understand that it is a divine appointment. Let the universe know you've received this transmission by liking, subscribing, and sharing your journey in the comments below. Affirm your path by typing "I resonate" or the number 111 to connect with the frequency of this truth and with the countless other souls who walk this very same sacred path alongside you. You are part of a soul family, and your moment of recognition is now. There is a unique and often devastating sorrow that comes from watching everyone around you seemingly glide forward, collecting milestones like trophies, while you feel as though you are suspended in time, frozen in a landscape where the path ahead remains shrouded in mist. You see your friends, your peers, even those younger than you, landing the jobs they once dreamed of, their faces beaming with a sense of purpose and direction. You witness them buying houses, planting roots in the earth, creating sanctuaries of their own. You see the joyful announcements of engagements and marriages, the celebration of unions blessed by love and commitment. You watch as they begin families, bringing new life into the world, their existence expanding in ways that seem so natural, so preordained. And in the midst of this grand procession of life, you find yourself still grappling with the most fundamental questions. Sometimes struggling just to decide what you want for breakfast, let alone what you want for your entire life. The contrast is stark, the weight of it immense. It feels like standing still in the middle of a bustling train station, watching with a heavy heart as every train departs for a known destination, leaving you alone on the platform with no ticket and no map. And in that quiet, echoing space of perceived stillness, a voice begins to creep in. It's not a loud, booming voice, but a subtle, insidious whisper that slithers into the cracks of your self-doubt. It's a voice that carries the chilling frequency of inadequacy. "You're behind?" it murmurs, its words laced with the poison of comparison. "You're falling behind." This voice, the great deceiver, weaves a devastating narrative. It tells you that everyone else in the world was handed a secret manual at birth, an instruction booklet for life that you, for some unknown reason, never received. It paints a picture of a grand race where, at the sound of the starting gun, everyone else began sprinting towards their destinies, towards their gleaming futures, while you somehow remained at the starting line, motionless, as if your feet were cast in lead. This voice is the architect of your deepest anxieties, the phantom of a timeline that was never yours to begin with. It is the echo of a collective illusion, and its power lies in its ability to make you believe that you are the only one who cannot hear the music of the grand cosmic dance. But what if I were to tell you a profound and sacred truth? What if I were to tell you that this feeling, this deep-seated fear of being left behind, has absolutely nothing to do with time at all? What if this entire experience is not a measure of your progress, but a testament to your depth? What if it's a sign that you are connected to something far more profound, something that the hurried pace of modern society has taught us to ignore, to devalue, to fear? What if the stillness you feel is not emptiness, but a sacred incubation? Because the ultimate truth, the one your soul has been yearning for you to hear, is this: you were never, ever behind. You were simply in a different season of growth. You were not standing still. You were growing roots. You have been engaged in a sacred subterranean process, a journey into the depths of your own being. And that, my dear soul, is a journey that requires not speed, but stillness, not haste, but incredible courage. You just needed time, but not the kind of time that is measured by the frantic ticking of a clock or the relentless flipping of a calendar. Not the linear, rigid, man-made time that society uses as a yardstick to measure worth and success. No, you needed a different kind of time altogether. You needed sacred time, soul time, The kind of time that allows a seed to lie dormant in the cold, dark earth, gathering strength and life force in the unseen realms before it even begins to dream of the sun. The kind of time that allows the caterpillar to dissolve completely within the chrysalis, a process of utter annihilation before the miracle of resurrection into a butterfly. This is the time of deep, foundational work, the time of becoming. It is a period of divine gestation, where the most essential parts of you are being formed, fortified, and prepared for the magnificent blossoming that is your destiny. Most people do not understand this. They are terrified of the dark, of the unknown, of the quiet. They are afraid of the very process you have been bravely navigating. Most people live their entire lives in a state of frantic, unconscious motion. They are racing against a set of invisible deadlines, milestones created not by the wisdom of the soul, but by the anxieties of a society obsessed with external validation. They measure their own worth, and the worth of others, by how quickly they can check boxes on a list that was written for them, a script they never thought to question. Graduate by 22. Build a career by 25. Find a partner and marry by 30. Purchase a home by 35. Have children before 40. The list goes on, a relentless treadmill of expectations. Life, in their perception, has become a twisted, high-stakes game show where the fastest contestant, the one who hits all the buzzers at the right moment, wins the grand prize of societal approval. They are running, always running. But do they ever stop to ask what they are running towards? Or more importantly, what they might be running from? But here is the secret that the game show hosts never tell you. Here is the truth that dismantles the entire illusion. Those timelines, those perfectly curated life paths that are presented as the gold standard, they are complete and utter fiction. They are beautiful, alluring, and incredibly dangerous fictions that keep you tethered to a wheel of endless striving, a race towards finish lines that do not actually exist in the landscape of the soul. These timelines are constructs designed to keep the machinery of the collective running smoothly, but they often come at the cost of individual authenticity and divine purpose. And so, while you have been agonizing, torturing yourself for what you perceived as your slowness, for taking the winding, scenic route through the wilderness of your own becoming, the very people who seemed so far ahead of you are often just playing a role. They are proficient performers in a play they never auditioned for, following a script they never questioned, a script that may be leading them further and further away from their own soul's truth. They are indeed moving fast, yes, but ask yourself this: are they moving towards something that truly sets their soul on fire? Are they moving towards a life that resonates with their deepest, most authentic frequency? Or are they simply moving, driven by a deep, unexamined fear of what might happen if they were to slow down, if they were to stop, if they were to be still long enough to ask themselves the terrifyingly simple question, what do I truly want? Their speed is often a measure not of their clarity, but of their avoidance. They are running from the silence, from the void, from the sacred space where the true self resides. You, on the other hand, have had the courage to stand in that silence. You have dared to face the void, and in that, you are light years ahead in the only journey that truly matters, the journey back to yourself. Think about the life of a great tree for a moment, a magnificent ancient oak. When you plant its acorn, you see nothing on the surface for weeks, sometimes even months. The ground looks empty, barren, unchanged. If you were to judge the potential of that acorn based solely on external appearances, you would quickly conclude that it was a failure. You might think it was defective, broken, hopelessly behind schedule compared to the fast-growing weeds that shot up around it almost overnight. But what is happening beneath the surface? In the quiet, nurturing darkness of the earth, an entire, complex root system is being meticulously developed. Intricate networks of life-giving foundations are spreading deep and wide, anchoring the future tree, creating a stable base that will one day support something truly magnificent, something that will withstand the fiercest storms and provide shelter for generations to come. That tree never apologizes for its period of unseen growth. It doesn't lament the time it spends establishing those vital roots. It doesn't compare itself to the weeds that sprouted quickly and then withered and died just as fast, their existence fleeting and without substance. The tree understands a deeper wisdom. It knows that true, lasting strength is built in the darkness. It trusts the process. You, dear one, are that tree. And for all this time that you have berated yourself, for all the years you thought you were hopelessly behind, you were actually engaged in the most crucial work of all. You were developing roots. Roots of resilience, roots of wisdom, roots of self-knowledge, roots that run deeper and stronger than anyone on the surface can possibly see. Those years of profound uncertainty, those seasons of feeling utterly lost, those long nights of not knowing which direction to turn, that was not wasted time. That was never wasted time. That was foundation building. That was your soul, with its infinite wisdom, refusing to settle for a shallow, surface-level existence. It was your spirit refusing to build a magnificent life on a foundation of sand. That was your inner wisdom, your higher self, acting as a divine guardian, protecting you from the catastrophic mistake of rushing into a life that was not meant for you, a life that would have been a beautiful cage, a life that ultimately wouldn't fit the expansive truth of who you are. This period of seeming delay was a profound act of divine intervention, a sacred pause designed to ensure that when you finally do rise, you will rise with unshakable strength and clarity. But let's be brutally honest about why this hurts so much, why this feeling of being behind carries such a visceral sting. The pain is not truly about a calendar or a clock. It's not actually about being behind in the race of life. It's about something far more primal, far more deeply embedded in our human DNA. It's about the fundamental need for belonging. It's about the terrifying fear of being left out, of being cast out from the tribe. It is the deep, cellular terror of being deemed unworthy, of being told, through the success of others, that you don't matter. When you see others hitting those conventional milestones, it triggers this ancient, deep-seated fear that perhaps you don't have what it takes, that maybe you are fundamentally flawed in some irreparable way, that perhaps everyone else did receive that cosmic instruction manual, that secret set of rules for the game of life, and it somehow skipped your mailbox, leaving you to navigate this complex world all on your own. This fear, this primal terror of exclusion, is what makes you do desperate things. It makes you act out of alignment with your own soul. You start to force moves, to make choices not from a place of inspiration, but from a place of panic, just to create the illusion of movement, just to feel like you're keeping up with the herd. You accept jobs that drain the life force from your very soul, that feel like a betrayal of your true calling. But you do it because, on paper, they look impressive. They give you a title, a sense of security, a way to answer the dreaded question. So, what do? You might rush into relationships that your intuition is screaming against, settling for a connection that feels hollow, simply because being in a couple seems like tangible evidence that you are normal, that you are lovable, that you are on track. You make major life-altering decisions not because they align with the deepest truth of who you are, but because they align with the person you think you should be by now, according to a timeline that was never yours. And then, a strange and hollow phenomenon occurs. Those forced moves, those panic-driven decisions, they don't bring the relief you so desperately craved. That prestigious job you took to prove you were successful, it leaves you feeling empty, uninspired, like a ghost haunting the hallways of someone else's dream. That relationship you rushed into to avoid the sting of being alone, it often makes you feel more alone than ever, like you're wearing clothes that are 2 sizes too small, constantly constricting and reminding you that this isn't the right fit. The trendy apartment you rented in the right neighborhood to project an image of success, it never quite feels like home. Why? Because when you make choices from a place of panic about being behind, you invariably end up creating a life that belongs to someone else's timeline, a life that is a monument to societal expectation, not a temple for your own sacred soul. Now, here is something that nobody ever talks about, a truth that is often whispered only in the most enlightened circles. The immense pressure to be somewhere, to achieve something, by a certain age yet, has nothing to do with your personal well-being. It is not designed for your soul's highest evolution. It is, in fact, a projection of other people's anxieties onto you. It is the manifestation of your parents' fear that they didn't prepare you properly for the world. It is the reflection of society's deep-seated need to categorize, to label, to make predictable sense of the beautiful, messy, unpredictable complexity of a human life. It is the economy's relentless demand for predictable consumers who will buy the houses, the cars, and the insurance policies right on schedule, keeping the gears of the system turning. But your life, your sacred, one-of-a-kind, miraculous life, is not a product to be consumed by other people's expectations. The most truly successful people, the visionaries, the artists, the innovators, the ones who build something truly meaningful and lasting in this world, they rarely, if ever, followed the conventional timelines. They took detours that confused and worried everyone around them. They spent years in what looked like obscurity, years that appeared to be fruitless from the outside but were everything on the inside. They were honing their craft. They were healing their wounds. They were deepening their understanding. They were listening to the subtle whispers of their own soul. They honored their own unique internal rhythm instead of trying to dance to someone else's frantic beat. And because they gave themselves the sacred permission to move at their own pace, to trust their own divine timing, they eventually created things that mattered. They built legacies that lasted. They brought forth creations that were uniquely and authentically theirs, expressions of a soul that had been allowed to mature and ripen in its own perfect time. But here is where it gets tricky, where the path requires even greater awareness. Even when you understand all of this intellectually, even when your mind can grasp the logic of this truth, it is still incredibly hard to live it. Because every single day, you are bombarded with evidence, with a tsunami of images and stories that seem to prove that everyone else is moving faster, achieving more, and living a better life than you. Social media feeds become a gallery of your perceived failures, filled with engagement announcements, job promotions, and exotic vacation photos. Family dinners can feel like an interrogation, with well-meaning but misguided relatives asking when you're going to settle down, as if settling were the ultimate goal of a human life, instead of rising, expanding, and becoming. You are surrounded by friends who seem to have it all figured out, while you are still deep in the beautiful, chaotic process of figuring out who you even are. This constant, relentless comparison is a potent poison. It takes the sacred, natural timing of your soul's journey and transforms it into a source of deep and debilitating shame. It makes you feel like there is something fundamentally wrong with you, when in fact, there is something profoundly right with you. Maybe you're taking longer because you are being more careful, more intentional. Maybe you're moving slower because you are choosing to go deeper, to excavate the true treasures of your being rather than just collecting trinkets on the surface. Maybe you're not behind at all. Maybe you are simply on a different path entirely, a path less traveled, a path that leads not to a destination of societal approval, but to the kingdom of your own soul. Consider this radical possibility for a moment. What if the people who seem so far ahead of you are actually the ones who are lost? What if their speed comes not from clarity, but from a deep, abiding fear? What if they are running so fast because they are terrified of what they might discover about themselves if they ever dared to slow down? What if your willingness to take your time, to sit with the discomfort of uncertainty, to bravely admit that you don't know what comes next, is actually the ultimate sign of courage, not weakness? The world desperately needs more people who refuse to be rushed. It needs people who are willing to sit in the uncomfortable, fertile space of not knowing until a real, authentic knowing emerges from the depths. It needs people who prioritize depth over speed, meaning over milestones, and authenticity over achievement. Because the immense problems we face as a collective, the challenges that truly matter, they require solutions that can only come from people who have taken the time to develop true wisdom. Not just accumulate accomplishments, but taking your time does not mean being passive. It does not mean sitting around and waiting for life to happen to you. There is a vast and crucial difference between honoring your natural timing and using your confusion as an excuse to avoid taking any action at all. The key to this entire journey is learning to distinguish between the two. It is about discerning the difference between a sacred patience that comes from deep inner wisdom and a debilitating paralysis that comes from fear. How do you know the difference? You feel it in your body. Real, active patience feels grounded. It feels expansive. It feels like you are preparing for something important, even if you don't know exactly what that something is yet. There is a sense of quiet excitement, of potential, of trust. False patience, which is really just fear in disguise, feels anxious. It feels constricted. It feels like you are hiding from something, usually from the risk of making a mistake, of failing, of being judged. One is active waiting. The other is passive, avoiding. Your soul always knows the difference, even when your mind tries to convince you otherwise. So, how do you know if you're truly honoring your timing or just procrastinating out of fear? How do you give yourself permission to move at your own pace while still ensuring that you are, in fact, moving? The answer lives in the wisdom of your body, not the chatter of your mind. Your mind will create elaborate, convincing justifications for both rushing and stalling. But your body, your intuition, it tells the unvarnished truth. When you are honoring your natural timing, there is a sense of rightness, a deep, cellular calm, even in the midst of uncertainty. There is a feeling that you are exactly where you need to be, even if you can't logically explain why. When you are avoiding out of fear, your body feels tight, constricted, like you are constantly holding your breath, waiting for permission to live. And here is something that might surprise you, a beautiful paradox. The very fact that you even feel behind often means you are actually ahead of the curve. Because feeling behind requires a level of self-awareness that most people never access. It requires that you are looking at your life honestly, that you are questioning the status quo instead of just sleepwalking through it. Most people never even stop to question whether they are on the right path. They just keep running because everyone else is running. But you stopped. You looked around. You asked yourself if this race was even worth winning. That questioning isn't weakness. It is profound intelligence. It is your inner compass, your soul, refusing to be hijacked by external pressure. It is your higher self saying, wait, let me make absolutely sure this is where I truly want to go before I spend my precious life energy getting there. And that pause, that moment of sacred uncertainty that feels so uncomfortable, is actually the birthplace of authentic choice. Because here is what they don't teach you in school. Life is not a race with a single finish line. It's more like a symphony or a great jazz improvisation. Some musicians come in early with a flurry of notes. Some come in late with a soulful melody. But the magic happens when everyone finds their own unique rhythm and plays it fully, with all of their heart. Your timing doesn't have to match anyone else's. Your solo doesn't have to sound like theirs. The only requirement is that when your moment to play arrives, you play with everything you have. And your moment will come. Not when you think it should, not when others expect it to, but when you are truly ready. It will come when the roots you have been patiently growing in the darkness are finally strong enough to support the magnificent being you are becoming. It will come when all that time you thought you were wasting was actually preparing you for something you couldn't have even imagined. The people who seem to have it all figured out in their 20s often find themselves falling apart in their 40s, having to dismantle a life that was never truly theirs. The ones who rushed into marriages find themselves divorced and starting over. The ones who frantically climbed the corporate ladder discover, at the top, that it was leaning against the wrong wall. Meanwhile, the ones who took their time, who honored their own process, who refused to be rushed into someone else's definition of success, they are just hitting their stride. Your timeline is not a mistake. It is not evidence that you are broken or behind or lacking some essential piece. It is evidence that you are human, that you are complex, that your life is a sacred work of art, not a cheap assembly line product. You are not mass-produced furniture that can be put together in 30 minutes with a simple instruction manual. You are a masterpiece that requires patience, attention, and time to reveal itself fully. So, stop apologizing for taking your time. Stop feeling guilty for not having it all figured out. Stop comparing your Chapter 3 to someone else's Chapter 20. Your story is unfolding exactly as it should. The delays were not detours. They were part of the path. The confusion was not a malfunction. It was necessary preparation. The time you thought you were losing was actually time you were investing in becoming who you were always meant to be. And when you finally do arrive at your destination, whenever that may be, you will arrive as your whole, authentic self. And that, my friend, will have been worth every single moment of the wait. You were never behind. You were simply on your own divine schedule, preparing for a future so bright it required you to build your strength in the shadows first. Trust the process. Your dawn is not just coming. You are the dawn.